Hello, everyone. Pastor Dan.
Well, howdy, Dan. Pastor Dave here, also known as Compelled Unbeliever. Your video is entitled, Don't Be a Practical Atheist. Well, I never really wanted to be an atheist. I was a hardcore fundamentalist. So I'm very excited because I know you're going to give me at least just one good reason to believe in any God, much less your God. But we'll see. I somehow am a little skeptical. It just got real.
Oh, wow. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is none who does good.
This sentence ends with, there is none that can do good, or depending upon translation, they can do no good. If one atheist ever has done any good, this sentence is false. If part of the sentence is false, the entire sentence is false, and is thus a lie. I can also flip that around and say, a fool hath said in his heart, there is a God, which serves no purpose.
Today, I'd like to focus on the fact that this psalm says that he is a fool who says in his heart, there is no God. So that is what we might term atheism.
So here we go, just repeating the same lie. That still is not helping anyone. Name calling doesn't convince anyone of anything.
We could use the title of practical atheism. That's what the scriptures seem to be most concerned with. Someone who denies God's existence.
This is a basic, fundamental misunderstanding of what atheism is. I do not believe there is a God. I am not denying God. A denial of God is admitting that God does exist, but I don't like what he says. But that's not the case. I simply do not believe in your God. We could also look at Islam. Muhammad was an actual person. I do not deny that. I deny the fundamental beliefs of Islam. I have no reason to live my life by edicts of a religion of a God that does not exist. So that is perfectly sensible.
Or living in a way and speaking in a way that misrepresents him in your heart and in your life. So if you take on lies about God, not only is that idolatrous, but that also has a form of practical atheism, because you're not believing what the scriptures tell us about God.
What you're suggesting here is atheists lie about God or misrepresent God because they simply do not believe in your God.
A practical atheism most often, and it's a corruption of the heart, right? The fool says in his heart there is no God. So
really, I'm hoping you can come up with some new material.
And so to have unbelief is to be corrupted in your heart. Notice also that there is almost a seamless connection between the corruption of the heart and the corruption of the life, right? The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They do abominable deeds, right? They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is none who does good.
Repeating something over and over is great for indoctrination and brainwashing. However, it does not make what is not factual, factual. No matter how many times you repeat a lie, it's still a lie.
Practical atheism is usually an issue that comes down to denying God's providence and his sovereignty and his government of the world.
So Dan, imagine any God that does not exist. A believer of that God can say that you're just denying that their God exists, and their argument will be just as weak as yours without any evidence for said God.
Someone who lives with no concern about judgment, with no concern about standing before God, with no concern about the accountability that they have towards their words and their actions, that is someone who lives practically as an atheist.
Actually, it is Christian theology that teaches that anyone can do whatever they want and be forgiven when they stand in front of God. Whereas atheists, we don't believe in God. Most atheists believe that we will simply cease to exist. So what we do in this life does matter. When there are no redos, there's no being just forgiven. We are accountable to other human beings and ourselves for what we do.
How simple it comes down. We can see it comes down to issues really of wanting to live for your own desire, for your own pleasure.
Here you're suggesting that it's evil or wrong to live a happy life. I take immense pleasure out of playing with my grandson, out of helping people, and evidently that's wrong.
Essentially, people desire to live in uncontrolled lusts, and that induces them to denial of providence. It's a convenient truth or untruth, depending on how you're looking at it. It's a convenient truth or untruth, depending on how you're looking at it.
Thank you, Pastor Dan. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Right? For someone to say, well, I just reject that God's going to... There may be a God out there, but I just reject that He's going to bring all of my actions, good and evil, to light.
Atheists simply don't say that. Atheists do not believe in a God. They do not reject a God that they know exists. They do not believe there is a God.
How does one come to be an atheist in this kind of a way? Thinking about doubts or entertaining doubts, that's one way in which we can be brought to this kind of practical atheism.
So, Pastor Dan, what you're teaching here is that taking into consideration what is real and not real is a very bad, dangerous thing.
Then wishing. This is something that I've seen in people, that they really can wish so hard that God is a certain way that eventually it just becomes real to them.
Pastor Dan, here you have successfully explained why a lot of people actually do believe in God. They aren't concerned about the facts. They just wish it into being. The question is how I apply this specific teaching of yours to why I should not be an atheist.
Why does the Bible describe such people as fools?
I thought you were the one doing the teaching here. The reason is people have to believe in something with zero evidence. They have to have faith. And interestingly, there is no religion, no God, that, even false gods, there is no God that does not require faith in order to believe in it. That's the only way they're going to have followers.
If you look at all human civilizations and societies throughout the history, the known history of mankind, there has always been a majority of people who recognize a supreme being.
Pastor Dan, I don't know where you went to seminary, but most seminaries should teach basic logic. This is called the argument from consensus. It is a logical fallacy. For example, most people believe that the earth was flat. That did not make it true. It did not make it real. The medical field, but everyone believed in humors. In fact, there are even writings, ancient Christian writings that are not in the Bible, where Jesus is praised for describing humors to the elders, the wise men. And humors aren't real. They don't work. We medically know that humors were wrong. But that was the consensus, and that is what everyone believed. So just because a bunch of people believe in a God and have for many years, it doesn't mean that there's any factual evidence behind that belief.
A lot of people, particularly young people, this is a huge problem. They think that they sort of need to rid themselves of their presuppositions that they were raised with if they grew up in the church particularly. They need to say, okay, I need to sort of strip myself of all of these presuppositions, and then I'll examine the question of God.
Well, I'm glad to hear this, and that is because a presupposition is another logical fallacy. That is, believing something without any evidence. You don't run towards a cliff just presupposing there's an invisible bridge there, because you're probably going to die. In the same respect, it applies to everything else. When you look into something and find out if it is factual or not factual, it is a good thing. If your God cannot be proven to be true, if there is zero evidence for that God, there is no reason to believe in that God.
So you need to suppress the atheism in your heart.
There is no atheism in anyone's heart. Is there atheism in your heart about thinking about a car or not thinking about a car? It's not an emotive thing. It's based on fact. It's a simple lack of belief. Do you have a strong emotional response because you don't believe in Zeus? It's the same thing. There is no emotional atheism.
Refrain from reading books authored by atheists or those who encourage atheism. Avoid interaction and disputation with confirmed atheists.
This is Cult Tactics 101. Only have access to the information that we give you, and do not have any access, preclude any access to any information of the outsiders. If God does exist and God is real, there is zero reason to be afraid of any information, because if it's bullcrap, it's bullcrap, and it will be very obvious. If it's real, that could be dangerous, because it will destroy a belief system that is not real.
And I think sometimes a Christian would hear that advice and they would say, well, that just seems weird. Why wouldn't I? It seems like you're just wanting me to avoid even asking the question.
And coincidentally, that's exactly what you did.
Really, the issue is one of strength and preparedness and training. If you're plagued by doubts, you are not the kind of person that ought to be disputing with atheists.
Pastor Dan, you could not be more correct than right here. Because if someone questions God and asks atheists, or just opens a science book, they're going to find that the teachings of the church do not correlate with reality. That there is no evidence for a God, and there is no rational reason to believe in your God.
Instead, turn to the Lord by continually engaging in prayer.
Because prayer is a meditative state where one alters their mind and is more able to brainwash themselves. And of course, everyone knows how well it works for amputees. Pastor Dan, it appears that you're a sincere fellow. Your title was Don't Be a Practical Atheist. And I was hoping that you would give me one reason to believe in your God. Instead, your video gave reasons to not believe in your God or your theology. In my search as a Christian, you really did touch on one thing that was very important, that you shouldn't go God shopping. You shouldn't try to make God into what you wanted God to be. And I realized there were lots of different denominations with lots of different beliefs. And so my quest was to find out what God was real. I wanted to know the real God. As a result, I found out that God was a mythological figure, just like Zeus or any other God that doesn't exist. The only rational conclusion that one can come to is it's just a book.